These guys back here, everybody recognize them? This is Larry, this is Mo, and this is Curly, right?
All right. Well, everybody, welcome. Good evening, and welcome to our recital lecture about Frank Sinatra, the early years. And I am so pleased that our guest speaker is available tonight to speak to everybody. And he'll after he's done, if you have any questions, by all means, you can unmute yourself, ask a question. But through the whole presentation, we're just going to leave you guys muted, excuse me. And so Sean Kennedy, he is a plethora of information on the Rat Pack and Frank Sinatra. He's an amazing vocalist, singer, and I know you're going to enjoy his presentation. So just make sure, this is his first Zoom. Okay,
Yes.
He usually does all of this in person, but this is his first Zoom event. So if there's any issues or anything, that just go ahead and type in the chat to me and I'll get it to Sean. And without, my favorite saying, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and give a warm welcome to Sean Patrick Kennedy.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to also say thank you to Tammy here. Tammy brought me into the world of Zoom and into the world of Glen Eagles Country Club, and I'm very, very excited about it. Normally I do all this kind of stuff live, so thank you so much for bearing with me. I've never done something like this before, but we're going to have some fun with it. And I promise you, if it's only okay, it'll be better next time. Okay, but we're going to have some fun, and I'm going to go ahead and play some stuff for you, and I think we're going to have a blast tonight. Just remember, we're all here for Old Blue Eyes, right? So let's enjoy it. Okay, we're going to go to widescreen. And actually, we have our first snafu. Let's see here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, just share your screen.
Yeah, I just got to do this thing. I got to do this thing first. I got to get us over to the other thing. And there it is. Okay, and here we go, folks. I hope you enjoyed. I made these videos and clips for you guys.
I'm gonna live till I die. I'm gonna laugh instead of cry. I'm gonna take the town and turn it upside down. I'm gonna live until I die. They're gonna say, what a guy. I'm gonna play for the sky. Ain't gonna miss a thing. I'm gonna have my fling. I'm gonna live until I die. The blues I'll lay low, I'll make them stay low. They'll never trail over my head. I'll be a devil till I'm an angel, but until then, hallelujah, gonna dance, gonna fly. I'll take a chance, riding high. Before my number's up, I'm gonna fill my cup. I'm gonna live until I die. Those blues I'll lay low, I'll make them stay low. They'll never trail over my head. I'll be a devil till I'm an angel, but until then, hallelujah, gonna dance, gonna fly. I'll take a chance, riding high. Before my number's up, I'm gonna fill my cup. I'm gonna live until I die.
Woo! There we go, Blue Eyes. All right. Well, first of all, I want to welcome you to this bit that I've put together for Frank Sinatra. And what's kind of interesting about it is that, Frank had such a big life compared to so many other people that I could do this on that I just couldn't do it in one go. So this is actually, instead of being Frank Sinatra as we titled it, it's going to be Frank Sinatra the younger years up until things started to go a little awry for our favorite blue-eyed singer. So without further ado, as Tammy would say, we're going to go right into this and start talking about Frank the younger years. Okay. Well, in part one, we're going to go into the fact that Francis Albert Sinatra was born, okay, on December 12, 1915, in an upstairs tenement at 415 Monroe Street in Hoboken, New Jersey. Now, he was an only child of an Italian immigrant, Natalina and Antonio Martino Sinatra. The couple had eloped on Valentine's Day, 1913, and were married in City Hall at New Jersey City, New Jersey. Now, not long after they were married, they did it again for their family. The reason why they did it again for their family is because obviously they had eloped and they'd gone to a courthouse and they wanted to have a nice party for everybody. Look at, there's nice little Frankie right there. We got a full screen. Can't read my script while this is going on, but it's okay. It's good because we're looking at a bum, right? we got a bum. All right, there you go. So when he was born, though, one of the problems is that he was delivered by forceps, and it was a really traumatic experience. He ended up with a perforated eardrum. He ended up with a really bad scar on his cheek, on his ear, and on the back of his neck. And in some pictures, when you look at him, you'll realize that one of his ears, the bottom part of it, is severely shorter than the other ear. And in the earlier pictures of Sinatra that you see before he gets to be a, you know, like an adult, you'll notice that this one ear sits out pretty far in his early goes. Now, that's one of the reasons why if you watch the old Looney Tunes, you'll see that Frank has, in the pictures that they do in the Looney Tunes, he's got these ears that sit out kind of like Dumbo because the one ear set out so far. But later on in life, you'll notice that his ears tucked in pretty good at the top, and he obviously had something done to do that. So due to his birth injuries, his baptism was delayed several months. Later on, he got another childhood operation to fix the mastoid bone, and it left even more deep scarring on his neck. In Frank's teen years, a lot of the kids in school used to call him Scarface, as a matter of fact, and it was really traumatic for him. During the Great Depression, Frank's mother provided money to him, gave him lots of outings with his friends, and she bought him extremely expensive clothes, which made it so that the kids around the neighborhood used to call him the best dressed kid in school and the richest kid on the block. One of the main reasons why that was the case was, unlike a lot of kids at that time, Frank was an only child. And in his neighborhood, that meant that he got his own bedroom, and that was crazy in his day. You know, nobody got their own bedroom. So people assumed that he was rich, but at the same time, he really wasn't. He was very, very destitute, along with his father and his mother. And like I said, they lived in basically a one-room apartment. All this was, he was excessively thin when he was a kid, obviously, in his younger years. And you'll remember that he used to tell a lot of self-effacing jokes. And he said, I was a skinny kid, so skinny that my eyes were single file. And between my two peepers, my nose, my mouth, and my belly button, my old man thought it was a clarinet. And that was one of his jokes they used to tell on stage. Sinatra developed an interest in music, particularly in big band jazz. And from a young age, he became addicted to listening to the radio, like a lot of kids at the time. He became a kid that liked to sing on the top of the piano. It was a player piano at his father's bar. It was called Marty O'Brien's. And it was named Marty O'Brien's, just so that you know, because of the fact that though his father was a boxer at the time, nobody would go and see, apparently, an Italian boxer. They used to make terrible jokes about the fact that boxers back in those days, if they were Irish, you know, they'd get a draw. But if they were Italian, why go pay to see an Italian fight in the street? You see that every day, you know. So he named the place Marty O'Brien's, and a lot of people knew him as Marty and not Martino, because he wanted to kind of go off of the fact that he was an Irish guy in the ring. Now, of course, I'm sure if you met him, he had a very different accent from that. If we can go back to the other screen. Okay, that's Marty O'Brien's, by the way. Are we back to the other screen so I can see the...
This is
this
is Marty O'Brien.
That's Marty O'Brien's right there. Yep, and Marty O'Brien still exists. It's not called Marty O'Brien's anymore. There's Bing Crosby, his biggest hero. But yeah, Marty O'Brien still exists. It's still in the same place. And if you ever want to go do like a Sinatra crawl, and you can look around Hoboken, different places, a company took over that building a while back in the early 2000s, and renamed it Marty O'Brien's, and it was open until the kind of depression that we went through in 2008, and then it was turned into a different place. But it's still there, and you can go in, you can go get a drink, and you can raise one to Frank if you like. Now, just so you know, Frank's mother was not enthusiastic about him being a singer. She really wasn't. But at a certain point, she realized, and you can quote her by saying that she thought that he had something, and that's the quote that she made. And Sinatra later recalled, he said, "Yeah, there she is. That's Dolly. That's what she liked to be called. Natalini liked to be called Dolly, and Martino liked to be called Marty." There they are. That's on their wedding day. That's probably, I would have to assume, during the time that they spent with their family. I don't think that they went to the courthouse looking like that. They look pretty sharp. All right, thank you, Tammy. So Sinatra, while sitting on the player piano at his father's bar, one day somebody asked him to sing a song, and he sang a song, and somebody gave him a nickel, and this is what he said. So one day I got a nickel, and I said, "Hey, this is the racket. I thought this is a wonderful thing to sing," and I never forgot it. So that's a quote from Frank himself. Now, during his early teenage years, Sinatra forced himself to develop his voice, wanting to make himself a little something, and he idolized Bing Crosby, and he'd adopted Crosby's props, such as his pipe and his sailor cap. We got a picture of Bing. You can see that.
Oops, hang on.
It's okay.
Yikes. Yeah, hang on.
Picture number F. Sorry. F for forget about it. Okay, let's go to picture F. Oh. There you go, Bing Crosby. How many people listen to him? a lot of you. There goes Bing. There you go. Oh, boo, boo, boo. There you go. Every Christmas we definitely listen to him. But he had a beautiful voice, and not only did Frank Sinatra idolize him, but so did most of the singers at the time. But another huge influence was on Dean Martin. Dean Martin used to actually do impersonations of Bing Crosby at clubs while he wasn't busy boxing when he was a younger guy. Okay, let's get back to the script. All right, so I'm just going to kind of bounce around here. The script is just kind of, to keep me on track about the years. But he graduated, and I don't know if any of you are from the area, but he graduated from David E. Rue Junior High School. I don't know if that still exists. And that was his junior high school. And then he enrolled in A.J. Demarest High School. I don't know if either of those exist to this day. But he arranged the bands and the school dances. But Frank didn't last very long there. He was only a student for 47 whole days. And he was expelled for probably the craziest charge I've ever heard. It was called general rowdiness. Oh, my goodness, I've never heard of such a thing. His school principal, Arthur Stover, said that he showed no real talent for anything. And his math teacher said he was a lazy boy with absolutely no ambition at all. So that's the public school system for you. Sinatra's father was particularly disappointed in his son, hoping he'd make it to college. And Sinatra recalled that his father scolded him in his very strong local accent. And he said, "Hey, what's the matter with you? Don't you want to learn nothing?" And that's what he said to him out on the steps. Matter of fact, he makes that joke a lot during his shows in the 1960s. But he says it's an actual moment. He was very embarrassed. His mother enrolled him in a Drake Business School in the area, but he only lasted 11 months there. And basically, it just got to the point where she was getting him odd jobs, and she was lining him up with all this. So she was a great mom. She gave him money. She lined him up with different jobs. She even got him a job in the shipyards where he was a riveter. And if you can imagine somebody who probably weighed 90 pounds holding a rivet gun, if you've ever seen one, it's kind of like a jackhammer. The things weigh about 150 pounds. So the idea that Frank Sinatra was going to spend his days with a rivet gun next to ships and bridges, putting hot rivets in, the item itself weighed more than he did. And I'm sure he couldn't even carry the bucket with the rivets, but he had that job for a short period of time until he started moonlighting in the evenings to go sing. He found jobs where he started to sing for $1 each, and then he started getting elocution lessons, for $1 each, from a guy named John Quinlan, who was the first person to really notice that he had a really impressive vocal range. He started working with him on that. In 1935, Sinatra began singing professionally, and there you go. That right there. Does anybody know what the name of this group was before Frank Sinatra joined the group? I know everybody knows them as the Hoboken Four, but does anybody out there, raise your hand, know what the name of that group was before he joined the group? Because if you do, you're a big time Bobby Saucers. He does. That guy says he does. Well, in case you don't, their name was the Three Flashes. And if you know anything about Frank Sinatra, he was only 5'7". So those guys have got to be teeny. He's taller than all of them. He actually looks like a tall guy there. Look at that. Okay, let's go back to the script. It's a pretty good picture, actually. He looks great. All right, so if you got that right, you know, you're a helpless Bobby Soxer for sure, you know, to this day. All right, so Fred Tamburo, the group's baritone instead of Sinatra at the time, Frank hung around us like we were gods or something. And we only took him in because he owned a car and he could drive us around to gigs. So, you know, even back in the day, you know, Frank was really lucking out each step of the way. And if his mother didn't help him in each one of these spots, it's like a lot of people. You may be really good at something, but unless you get a little bit of luck and a little bit of help and some support, you're not going to get anywhere. And he really just seemed to be in the right place at the right time a few times. Now, he learned he was going to be auditioning for the Major Bowes Amateur Hour, and he begged the group to let him in on the act. So with Sinatra in the group once and for all became the Hoboken Four. So that's who they were. And she showed you that picture. So he passed the audition, and he went on to, you know, go on to the Major Bowes Amateur Hour show. And they each earned $12.50 for the appearance, which ended up attracting 40,000 votes and won first prize, which is kind of amazing. If you think about that today, if you do anything that gets you 40,000 votes or gets you first prize or anything like that, you're going to get a lot more than $12. But I guess you got to look at it like 1935 or 39. Yeah, 35 money. That's probably, you know, close to what, 50 or 60 bucks or 70 bucks or something like that today for that $12. Sinatra quickly became the group's lead singer, and much to the jealousy of his careless fellow group members, he also got most of the attention from the girls. And due to the success of the group, Bowes kept asking them to return, but he couldn't return them under the same name, so they had to keep making up names. And Sinatra said in an interview once, probably being a little bit in jest, said that they came up with names like the Secaucus Cockamammies and the Bayonne Bacalas and stuff like that because they always had to come up with a new name. Let's go ahead and show them a picture right here. This is Harry James Orchestra with Frank Sinatra, because believe it or not, Harry James heard Frank Sinatra singing with these guys on the radio, and Harry James said, you know, I think I got to have this kid. And there he is sitting right next to Harry James, to the left of him in the center, and he looks like he's about 12 years old. Yeah, there's Frank right there. That's pretty cool. It's a great picture. And that's 1936. Let's go ahead and get back. All right. So he ends up going to the Rustic Cabin, which is a restaurant at the time. It's a roadhouse, and he's singing. And at the Rustic Cabin, he used to get paid $15 a night to sing, and he got free food. So while he's singing there with the Hoboken Four, they're both basically doing backup vocals, and he's singing away on WNEO radio and WNEW radio in New York City. Harry James hears it. So despite the low salary, Sinatra felt like this is a break that he was waiting for because, let's face it, he's on the radio. And he told his friends at the Hoboken Four that night, he said, listen, after tonight, no one's going to ever be able to touch me. I'm going to go on and do big things. So in 1939, bandleader Harry James heard him singing and got him a gig to a contract for 2 years for $79 a week. And then they got him a gig at the Paramount, which was a pretty big deal back in the day, the Paramount Theater in New York. And so when he goes to the Paramount Theater, he immediately has an effect on young people, and it becomes kind of a big deal. Let's try to show that, the Paramount. Yeah, there you go. Actually, this is Tommy Dorsey, who hears him at this event, because believe it or not, when Tommy Dorsey hears him, we can go back, it changes everything really quickly in Sinatra's life. Sinatra has a 2-year deal with Harry James. We go back to it. And just back to the script, I want to tell them about the,
Sorry
he has
about that.
it's okay. He has a 2-year deal, but he cuts it off pretty quickly. He records From the Bottom of My Heart with Harry James and All or Nothing at All, which is a pretty famous song of his. And I'm going to play it for you, but just so you know, only 8,000 records of this sold at first. It wasn't until later on when he re-recorded it again with Dorsey that it became the big hit that you all know. And then, of course, they re-released the Harry James version, and that became an even bigger hit. But let's go ahead and play that for you. And I will go ahead and bring us into full screen. And at first, I'm going to play for you the Hoboken 4 so you can see Frank when he was a kid. And let's go to that. And then I'll go into the other one. This is the first recordings from 1935 of Frank Sinatra.
Share your screen.
We have now the Hoboken 4.
Oh, I thought I had already done that. Okay. Okay, go down here. Sorry, guys. Let me get this right. If you hang out with me, I promise you, this will get better.
They call themselves the Singing and Dancing Fools. Who speaks for the group?
I will. I'm Frank. We're looking for jobs. How about it? Anyone that's ever heard it, like it.
Oh, my hair is curly, the men got curly hair. Oh, my teeth are pearly, and they also have pearly.
They're all holding their vocal cords.
Because I'll always wear a smile. It's always wear a smile. Like to dress up. Oh, we'll shine up to you. Everybody will hide you, do you? You make the whole world shine.
Yeah, so Frank had a great little voice there, and that was kind of a fun thing that they did. But I'm going to go ahead and bring us up to just a couple years later, so you can see the growth in Sinatra. It's pretty impressive because this is.
We have now the Hoboken 4. They call themselves the Singing and Dancing Fools. Who speaks for the group?
I will. I'm Frank. We're looking for jobs.
All right.
How about it?
Got a little snafu there. Sorry.
Anyone that's ever heard it, like it.
Oh.
Sorry about that. All right, here we are. This is just a few years later, and it's amazing the difference in vocals.
All or nothing at all. Half a love never appealed to me. If your heart never could yield to me, then I'd rather have nothing at all. All or nothing at all. If it's love, there is no in between. Why begin and cry for something that might have been? No, I'd rather have nothing at all. Oh, please don't bring your lips so close to my cheek. Don't smile or I'll be lost beyond recall. The touch of your hand and the kiss in your eyes makes me warm. And my heart may grow dizzy and fall. And if I fell under the spell of your call, I would be caught in the undertow. So you see, I've got to say no, no, all or nothing at all.
Lease for 0 down, 0 first month's payment, and 0 security deposit.
Oh, boy.
To experience the rush of the G70, G80's intuitive technology, and the stunningly elegant G90. Find your perfect.
Just end
Sorry
that,
about
yeah,
that,
just end that
guys.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know why that did that. It's a little smoother yesterday, but we're getting there, I promise. Okay, so basically what it,
If what I read is true,
I have no idea. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Just stop it. Just take your time.
Times lyric line and carousel. I'll
Yep.
try by
Stop your YouTube videos.
rich or poor, I'll always have a large.
I'm trying to find it.
Because whatever I've got, whatever I am in this rough and tumble.
Yeah, you'll have to close them up.
Goodness
You
gracious.
shell out for an occasional album of mine to so many of the disc jockeys brave enough to give me.
Is that
equal
Frank
time.
talking in the background?
Yeah, it is.
To
And I'm
all
trying
the
to
music
find
dreamers and doers,
the one that it is.
and I do mean songwriters, artists, conductors, and
This
musicians.
is so funny.
Hell, I can't pay off
That's
my
okay.
credit here.
Unreal.
Why don't I just take you all out for pizza lunch real soon, huh? Here's the last little memento of the days when I was a satellite of Tommy Dorsey.
Just take your time.
Oh, we're hearing something that we didn't know we were going to hear. There it is. Okay, great. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. That was not on my page. It actually pulled up. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. See where we are. I just totally messed that whole thing up. Okay. All right. I apologize, folks. Thanks for sticking with me. So All of Nothing, Nothing at All was a huge disappointment, actually, believe it or not. So Sinatra became frustrated with the status of the Harry James Band, feeling that he wasn't achieving the major success that he really wanted. His pianist and close friend, Hank Sinocola, persuaded him to stay with the group, but in November of 1939, he left James to replace Jack Leonard as the lead singer of the Tommy Dorsey Band. And that's the picture that you saw earlier with him and Tommy Dorsey. Sinatra earned $125 a week, though, going there. And if you think about that, that's starting to become huge money. In 1938, 39, I mean, in 1940, you're earning that kind of money. It's the same thing as earning like $500 or $600 a week today if you change that out. So he was doing pretty well. So he started appearing at the Palmer House in Chicago, and James released Sinatra from his contract on January 26, 1940. So it was 1940 when that happened. And when he went over to go sing with Tommy Dorsey, the very first song that he sung and was introduced with was the song Stardust, which of course got its major acclaim probably from Nat King Cole's version. But he went out there and he started singing Stardust first with the Tommy Dorsey Band. Tommy said of him, he goes, you could almost feel the excitement coming out of the crowds when the kids stood up to sing. Now, remember, he wasn't an idol yet. He was just some skinny kid with big ears. And I used to stand there so amazed that I'd almost forget to take my own solos. And if you know anything about Tommy Dorsey was about as big as you could get at the time. And it's hard to say that today because big bands, people don't know big bands as well today. But big band leaders obviously were just as big as any major artist or a DJ today or something. So for him to be so taken by Sinatra and sit there and just watch him, I mean, it's pretty impressive because he was so young. Now, Dorsey was a major influence on Sinatra, and he became kind of a father figure to him. And Sinatra copied his mannerisms and traits, becoming a demanding perfectionist just like him, and even adopting his hobby of toy trains, which, of course, if you know anything about Sinatra, he was a toy train nut, and literally until his last days at Twin Palms and all those places, he kept his trains, and they filled up an entire section of a house. He asked Dorsey to be the godfather to Nancy in 1940, and Sinatra later said that the only two people that he ever was afraid of in his life were his mother and Tommy Dorsey. Now, in his first year with Dorsey, Sinatra recorded over 40 songs. And if you think of that, most artists that you know today, it's amazing if they can knock out 11 songs in an album. And it usually takes sometimes 2 or 3 years to come out with another album. But he recorded 40 songs in the very first year. Sinatra's first vocal hit was the song Polka Dots and Moonbeams. And in late April 1940, his biggest chart appearance was I'll Never Smile Again, which is a beautiful song, topping the charts for 12 weeks beginning in mid-July. I'm going to go ahead and play that song for you right now and have a little bit less of an adventure, I hope. I'm going to do Polka Dots and Moonbeams for you. And that was the song that you started to hear a moment ago.
If what I read is true, I've made it pretty good. I don't know how long I can make it last, of course. Although, like Oscar Hammerstein's lyric line in Carousel, I'll try, by God, I'll try. But rich or poor, I'll always have a large public debt. Because whatever I've got, whatever I am, in this rough and tumble called life, I owe to others. To you who shell out for an occasional album of mine, to so many of the disc jockeys brave enough to give me equal time in Beatleland. And to all you music dreamers and doers, and I do mean songwriters, arrangers, conductors, and musicians. Hell, I can't pay off my kind of debt here. Why don't I just take you all out for a pizza lunch real soon, huh? Here's the last little memento of the days when I was a satellite of Tommy Dorsey's world. A country dance was being held in a garden. I felt a bump and heard an "Oh, beg your pardon." Suddenly I saw polka dots and moonbeams all around a pug-nosed dream.
I think that's Judy Garland.
The music started and was I the perplexed one? I held my breath and said, may I have the next one? In my frightened arms, polka dots and moonbeams sparkled on a pug-nosed dream. There were questions in the eyes of other dancers as we floated over the floor. There were questions, but my heart knew all the answers, and perhaps a few things more. Now in a cottage built of lilacs and laughter, I know the meaning of the words ever after, and I'll always see polka dots and moonbeams when I kiss my pug-nosed dream. There were questions in the eyes of other dancers as we floated over the floor. There were questions, but my heart knew all the answers, and perhaps a few things more. Now in a cottage built of lilacs and laughter, I know the meaning of the words ever after, and I'll always see polka dots and moonbeams when I kiss the pug-nosed dreams.
Well, that's pretty beautiful, if you ask me. Let's see here. Go ahead and I'll get rid of that so that doesn't come back at me. All right. All right, so Sinatra was first heard the recordings at the Hollywood Palladium in Hollywood Plaza, and he was astounded by how good he sounded in that particular recording. And when he started to hear those recordings, I mean, let's be honest, I mean, he was a real driven guy. So when it got down to it, he almost immediately after hearing those recordings decided that, you know, I think I've outgrown being with these big bands. I just want to go out on my own. But he kept sticking with it because he knew a good thing while he was a part of it, and he was with Tommy Dorsey. So after 1942, Sinatra did believe that he needed to go solo, but with an insatiable desire to compete with Bing Crosby, but he was hampered by his contract that Dorsey gave him. And it was a 43% contract for Sinatra for his lifetime. So whatever Sinatra was going to make for the rest of his life, Tommy Dorsey had a stake in it of 43%. So a legal battle ensued, and eventually it was settled on August 1942. And in September 3rd, 1942, Dorsey bade farewell to Sinatra. Sinatra reportedly saying, "I hope you fall on your ass, kid." So in other words, they did not end on good terms, but I think that there's a good reason. There are rumors at the time that Sinatra's mobster godfather, Willie Moretti, coerced Dorsey to let Sinatra out of his contract for a few $1,000s by holding a gun to his head. And that probably is a pretty big deal. And it's in some ways, it's probably a small part of the past that mixed with some other things later on went into, you know, Puzo's Godfather, you know, and stories like that for the horse in the bed kind of thing. Because there definitely were some people in Sinatra's orbit that wanted for him to do things well. And they were, you know, he had some interesting friends on the Italian side of things. I could say that because I'm half Italian, so it's okay. Let's go to picture L right here. I'd like to show them this picture. I think they'll like it. This right here is Frank Sinatra. Now, a lot of people know that Frank was, you know, he's never been one of these people that's been drawn in by race baiting or issues and stuff like that. And during the USO, he was the only performer that went and performed for the Japanese servicemen that were fighting underneath our flag. So it's pretty beautiful. And let's go ahead and move on. And go back to the main page. There you go. Thought that was a beautiful picture of him giving back. Now, Dorsey and Sinatra had been very close, but they never patched up their differences before he died, you know, in 1956. Died very young. Frank might have left Dorsey in a dust-up, but we left with a hit.
Can you go outside?
Can you hear me? Okay. He left with a hit that he'd re-record again and again. And I'm going to go ahead and sing that for you now. And he recorded this quite a few times, but this is my favorite version, though the track is not the greatest track. I'll go ahead and sing it for you, and let's give it a swing. I'm not the guy who cared about love, and I'm not the guy who cared about fortunes and such. Never cared much, oh, look at me now. Oh, I never knew the technique of kissing, and I never knew the thrill I could get from your touch. I never knew much, oh, look at me now. I'm a new man, better than Casanova at his best. With a new start, a brand new heart, I'm so proud I'm busting my best. So I'm the guy who turned out a lover, so I'm that guy who laughed at those blue diamond rings. One of those things, oh, look at me now. Swing, baby. Who cared about love, and I'm not the guy who cared about fortunes and stuff. I never cared much, oh, look at me now. And I never knew the technique of kissing, and I never knew the thrill I could get from your touch. Never knew much, oh, look at me now. I'm a new man, much better than Casanova at his very best. With a new start, a brand new heart, I'm so proud I'm busting my vest. So I'm the guy who turned out a lover, yes, I'm that guy who laughed at those blue diamond rings. One of those things, oh, look at me now. Hey, oh, look at me now. Look at me now. Hopefully you guys dug it. All right. So, getting to sing, get to knock the cobwebs out, that felt a little good. It's more like what I'm used to. All right. Now, Sinatra drove the girls crazy during World War II, but he had a theory. It's perfectly simple, he said. It was the war years, and there was a great loneliness, and I was that boy in every corner drugstore, that boy who'd gone off, got drafted into the war, and that's all. He really believed that. He believed that, you know, at that time, there was so many kids that had gone off that he, looks like we're losing someone. Okay, it looked like, in his opinion, he felt like he was that corner drugstore boy, the kid in school, the boy next door, and a lot of these girls missed their boyfriends and their husbands. Now, in May 1941, Sinatra topped the male singers polls in Billboard and Downbeat magazine. His appeal to Bobby Soxers and teenage girls at that time was called and revealed to the whole audience of popular music. So Bobby Soxers back in, are you hearing me? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I see you going like this. I apologize.
No, the dogs are barking, sorry.
Oh, okay, no, that's okay. I can't hear the dogs. They can bark away, folks. It's okay with me. Who let the dogs out? There you go. Now, a news alert on that is that Sinatra technically was the very first Tiger Beat person, basically, because those magazines like Downbeat magazines were a really big deal, and all the Bobby Soxers and all the young people at the time had copies of those because they wanted to look at pictures of Bing Crosby and all these people in concert, and so he was very popular. He was the #1 guy. The phenomenon became officially known as Sinatra Mania after his legendary opening at the Paramount Theater in New York City in December of 1942. You want to show that picture? It's picture N. Now, of course, this Sinatra Mania happened. Oh, that's a different picture altogether. Is that N? Oh, there's Downbeat. And there it is. That's the Paramount in New York, which, by the way, it's just been recently refurbished. For a long time, it had become, believe it or not, a sports arena where people played basketball, and it had this really gorgeous roof in it because it's got a beautiful theatrical roof in it. But they just redid it, and so if you ever go to the Paramount today to go see plays and music, it's pretty fantastic. It looks just like it did back in the day with all that, the beautiful sconces and everything on the wall. Let's go ahead and go back to the other page. Okay, so like I said, that was 20 years before Beatlemania. So he, you know, back then, I mean, when you were famous, you were pretty famous. There was only a couple of channels on TV, and AM radio only carried so many signals. So he was pretty much on everything that you could find, and anything that was going on with Frank Sinatra back in those days, it was all over the place. Now, according to Nancy Sinatra, Jack Benny later said, "I thought the goddamn building was going to cave in. I never heard such a commotion, all for this with some fella that I never heard of," which is pretty funny if you know Jack Benny. Sinatra performed for 4 weeks at the theater, his act following the Benny Goodman Orchestra, and his contract was renewed for another 4 weeks by Bob Whitman due to his popularity. He became known as Swoonatra, the voice, and his fans knew him as Sinatra Addicts, which is kind of a weird thing today, but I guess they were called Sinatra Addicts. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play a clip of what it was like if you went and saw Frank back in the day. And I think you're really going to like this because you get to have an audience participation kind of look to it. And I'll bring you over to that. Some Sinatra Mania.
And when I told them
how beautiful you are.
Share your screen.
Uh-oh.
They didn't believe me. They didn't believe me. Your lips, your eyes, your cheeks, your hair.
I'll go back to the beginning. There you go.
I told them how beautiful you are. They didn't believe me. They didn't believe me. Your lips, your eyes, your cheeks, your hair are in a class beyond compare. You're the loveliest girl that one could see. And when I tell them, and I'm certainly going to tell them, that I'm the man
Here's those Bobby socks.
whose wife someday you'll be. They'll never believe me. They'll never believe me. That from this great big world you've chosen me. That from this great big world you've chosen
Now that's pretty awesome for a live, wouldn't you say? I mean, Frank was pretty great. Let me go ahead and get the full screen off of here. Okay. You know, if you look at the growth between the first thing that you heard from 1935 until then, you're only talking about 4 or 5 years. So that's astounding. And he sounded like you just heard him live. So he just was a real talent. Today, there's so many people using voice correct and all this other stuff. And it's like, he's a guy that would go in there, and he was very famous for doing everything in one take. He would spend a week on each one of his songs separately. And then when he went in on the day of recording, this is just a quick aside, he would write out his songs before he sang them, before all of his friends. He would write in between while the orchestra was getting all rearranged. He would write that song 8 times, and then he would sing it 1 time. And if he ever had to do a retake because of a mistake by an instrument or something like that, sometimes he wouldn't even do it. He would just go and do it for the next day because he wanted to do a song in 1 take because he wanted the feeling to be a very specific sort of thing, and he felt like he got it right the first time. Okay, so within 1 week of the performance that you just heard, in that time at the Paramount, over 1,000 Sinatra fan clubs had been reported, literally reported in the United States. Sinatra became so huge that when he returned to the Paramount in October of 1944, only 250 people left the first show, and 35,000 fans were left outside, and they caused a riot known as the Columbus Day Riot outside the venue because they weren't allowed in. Bobby Sox's devotion to Sinatra was so loyal that they were known to write Sinatra song titles on their clothing, bribe hotel maids for an opportunity to touch his bed, and accost this person in the form of stealing clothing, which of course was normally his bow tie. I'm sure he couldn't keep a hold of one of those for his life. Sinatra released You'll Never Know, Close to You, and People Will Say We're in Love as singles. And by the end of 1943, he was more popular in a Downbeat magazine fan poll than Bing Crosby or Perry Como, which was huge at the time. He was no longer Bing Crosby's in his shadow. And, you know, I have a clip here that will show him and Bing Crosby and the boys trying to get funds together for war. Back in the day, of course, everybody remembers they did war bond stuff. And so they would get together and they would do these drives, they'd do shows. And this was one of the bits that they did at that time. And I'll go ahead and play it for you. think you'll enjoy this. It's pretty great.
And now for all you men in the armed forces who happen to be 13-year-old girls, we bring you your one and only singing favorite, the first atom ever split, Frank Sinatra. Lie down anywhere.
Thank you. That's a very peachy introduction, Dad.
Peach?
So only 13-year-old girls like me, huh?
That's what I hear.
All this stuff about 13-year-olds and me is just plain propaganda. I know one beautiful movie star who goes for me, and she isn't 13 either.
Really? I didn't know Lassie cared.
Well, she does.
Yeah, come to think of it, Frank, why shouldn't Lassie love you? That's a great thrill for a dog, hearing a pile of bones sing.
You been talking to Crosby lately, boy?
Can't miss him. Well, after all, Frankie, the guy works at the same studio with me. I gotta talk to him sometimes. You see, he has the key to the washroom.
I thought Crosby was behind all this. Why does he insult me that way? Why, I wouldn't hurt a fly.
Not even if you sat on one. Hey, Bing, step over here, will you?
What are you two guys cooking up, if I didn't know it was me?
Well, Bing, the time has come to stop these silly arguments between you and Sinatra, so we're gonna let you insult each other all you please one last time. Are you ready to rip into him, boy?
I have been for years.
Good, we'll get started. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present the battle of the century, a fight to the finish between no hair and no anything. In this corner, dynamic Frank Sinatra, weight 175.5 ounces, and over here, bulging Bing Crosby, right in the pink of young Lardhood. Okay, come out swinging. You're first, Sinatra. Call Crosby something.
Well,
Come on, call him something.
well, gee, there's so much to choose from. Can I call him anything?
Sure, anything.
Anything at all?
That's right, sure. Call him the worst thing you could think of.
Okay. Bing, you're a Bob Hope. That's what. Oh, I'll never be able to top that. Never in the world.
This is a fine fight. Everybody hits the referee here tonight.
Okay, I'll go ahead and end that there. But it was really cool. He got a chance to start, doing stuff with his heroes, and I think that's pretty neat. Okay, so Sinatra didn't serve in the military during World War II. And on December 11th, 1943, he was officially classified 4F, registrant not acceptable for military service, by his draft board because of a perforated eardrum. Now, however, U.S. Army files showed at a later date that he was not acceptable material from psychiatric viewpoint. But this emotional instability was hidden to avoid undue pleasantness for both the selectee and the inductive service. So that's kind of interesting. Apparently what it really was, even back when he was young, Sinatra had a pretty big temper. And that just kind of went that way for, a long time. And a lot of people know in his life, people like Shecky Green and a lot of other comedians, that if you told a joke about Sinatra, you better be ready for a reprise. We're going to go to pictures O and P really quick. This is during this time. Now, Sinatra, even though he wasn't in the service, as you can see here, he went on USO tours and he did stuff with the Andrews Sisters and different artists of the time. We show him the next picture. Yeah, there you go. And there he is. And even overseas, the German girls or the different people, wherever it was that they were, definitely enjoyed the USO events. All right, let's get back to our script. Okay. And at that time, Sinatra released I Couldn't Sleep a Wink Last Night, a single he recorded with his own version of Bing Crosby's White Christmas. And he also had I Dream of You, Saturday Night is the Loneliest Night of the Week, which is pretty famous, Dream, and Nancy with the Laughing Face as singles. And I'm going to go ahead and play Saturday Night is the Loneliest Night of the Week for you. And then I have a song coming up afterwards.
And now here's a great musical aggregation, Harry James and his boys. Also a fellow that used to work with him, Mr. Swoon himself, the old Calypso singer, Frank Sinatra.
Saturday night is the loneliest night of the week, 'cause that's the night that my sweetie and I used to dance cheek to cheek. I don't mind Sunday night at all, 'cause that's the night friends come to call, and Monday to Friday go fast, and another week is past. Saturday night is the loneliest night of the week. I sing the song that I sang for the memories I usually see, until I hear you at the door, until you're in my arms once more. Saturday night is the loneliest night of the week. Until I hear you at the door, until you're in my arms once more. Saturday night is the loneliest night of the week.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you. Just lie down there any place. That was B2 Sinatra.
Okay, so there's Frank, and another appearance with Bob Hope, which is pretty cool. In the Columbia years, we're going to go into now, Sinatra starts to go into his slump. It's kind of an interesting story, but we'll go into it right here. Sinatra sang on 160 radio shows, recorded 36 times, and shot 4 films. In 1944, he was performing on stage up to 45 times a week, singing up to 100 songs daily, and earning up to $93,000 a week in those days. That's pretty huge. That's huge even now. Sinatra released Oh, What It Seemed to Be, Day by Day, They Say It's Wonderful, 5 Minutes More, and The Coffee Song as singles. He launched his first album, and the voice of Frank Sinatra, which reached #1 on the Billboard chart. He was soon selling 10 million records a year. Sinatra was in command of Columbia, and his life was just great. I mean, obviously. Let's go to picture Q. If you got that. Right here. Sinatra ends up in a movie called The Miracle of the Bells, where he plays a priest, believe it or not. Now, sadly, at this time, there's some stuff going on in his personal life that we're going to get into, which not only made this movie flop, but it started to really affect his career. He went from this huge high where he's making 4 movies a year and making $93,000 a week, 52 weeks a year, and he's singing 100 songs a day, which you hear those kinds of numbers. It's just crazy. But he's putting a lot of abuse on his vocal cords on top of doing all this, and he's neglecting his family at home. Let's go back to the script, and I'll move a little bit forward here. Sinatra's reputation after that movie flopped, began to decline. It broke out in February that his affair with Ava Gardner and the destruction of his marriage to Nancy, though he insisted that his marriage had been long over, even before he had met Gardner, it really wasn't true. Financial difficulty followed his divorce and career decline. Sinatra's forced to borrow $200,000, even at this time while he was earning all that money, from Columbia to pay back taxes after MCA, his talent agency, refused to front him the money. He was rejected by Hollywood at this point, and he turned to Las Vegas and made his debut at the Desert Inn on September of 1949, and he also began singing at the Riverside Hotel in Reno. During this time, Sinatra became one of Las Vegas' pioneer residency entertainers and prominent figure in the Vegas scene, which of course we all know when he eventually bought shares and stakes in in the Sands Hotel. But he was the first person to kind of trailblaze into that area. In this period, it was described as his high watermark of Sinatra's hedonism and self-absorption. Sinatra's decline in popularity continued, and it became startlingly evident at his concerts. Believe it or not, let's show picture R here. While he was at the Desert Inn, he wasn't selling it out anymore. And at a later date, he ends up going to the Shapery in Chicago for a charity. And at this charity, there's 1,200 seats set up, and only 150 people show. This is actually, if you look at this picture here, this is the room that he stood in as to how it looked at that time. And imagine all those tables basically empty. Only 150 people showed up. And of course, when you're Frank Sinatra at that time, them not showing up is going to make all the newspapers and all the media, you know, and his career just nosedived. People were really disappointed in him. Let's face it. He had been all over the newspapers and all over television and everything with his wife, Nancy, and his children. And if any of you remember, Tina was just born at that time. So he meets Ava Gardner, and let's face it, Ava Gardner at that time had already developed a reputation as being somebody that was a bit of a homewrecker. Whether she deserved that reputation or not, you know, I don't think that she really was a homewrecker, but they met each other and they fell in love, and unfortunately, it caused the destruction of his family, and a lot of bad stuff started to happen to Frank. Let's go to picture S. During this time, Frank Sinatra had a television show, and it was called The Frank Sinatra Show. And I don't know if any of you have ever watched it in the reviews or the reruns. You can go ahead and cut it back away from that now. But Frank Sinatra's show was extremely popular. And at this time, it's all he had left to hold on to. And it gets canceled. Not because it's not highly rated. It's still rated decently. But the network just felt like at that time, like he just wasn't wholesome enough, and they did not like what was going on in his life. So they canceled the show. At this point, journalist Bob Boyer observed in the newspaper, he said, Sinatra's had it. It's sad. From the top to the bottom, in one horrible lesson, is Sinatra's career over. Well, Bert obviously didn't know Frank, and Columbia may have given up on Sinatra, but his very last studio recording, and I'm going to sing this for you. And by the way, I'm going to tell you this right now. Somehow this slipped past me. It's one of his early recordings, so it's during a time where, I mean, we all know the Nelson Riddle stuff. We all know the real super famous stuff from his early years. But just the other night when I was researching all this stuff, I found a song that I had never heard before. I'd heard Sheryl Crow sing it recently in the last 10 years. But this song was so beautiful, I swear to goodness, I literally learned it in the last 48 hours just for you guys, so bear with me. I'm going to sing this song for you. I think it's one of the most beautiful songs, and it's literally the song that Sinatra learned in his last session, or sang in his last session and recorded in his last session at Columbia after he had already been told by his talent agency that they were dropping him, and this was a contract obligation. He had to go in this day to finish this album, and it must have been pretty hard. I'm sure he went in there, you know, like other people have, knowing that their job is over. And he recorded this song, and it's beautiful, and I'm going to sing it for you. Hopefully you guys will love it, because I definitely love it. I think it's my favorite. I think it's my favorite Sinatra song at this point. I'm going to go ahead and try to bring it up. We've got a little commercial here that we got to get through, but we'll get through it really quick.
It's switching time to a Chromebook that updates automatically.
This is what happens when you lose your internet. You have to get commercials on your things. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go full screen. Actually, I'm not going to go full screen. I'm just going to sing this thing for you. How's that? Get set up here. And obviously, I'm going to read this because, let's face it, I just learned this song, but I think I can get it. Oh, shoot. Okay. And there's the commercial again. You gotta love it. Okay, this is technology at its best, folks. I apologize for all this.
That updates automatically. Switch to updates without interruption. Switch to Chromebook.
And here we go. I'm sentimental, So I walk in the rain. I've got some habits even I can't explain. Could start for the corner, turn up in Spain. Why try to change me now? I sit and daydream. I've got daydreams galore. Cigarette ashes, there they go on the floor. I go away weekends, leave my keys at the door. But why try to change me now? Why can't I be more conventional? People talk, people stare, so I try. But that's not for me, 'cause I can't see my kind of crazy world go passing me by. So let people wonder, let them laugh, let them frown. You know I'll love you till the moon's upside down. Don't you remember I was always your clown? But why try to change me now? Don't you remember I was always your clown? Why try to change me? Why try to change me now? Well, I hope you like that. I hope you like that fine. Go ahead and get out of that page. Okay. All right. Here we go. Now, Sinatra's career and marriage and voice are in ruin at this point. And, you know, as a matter of fact, during one of his shows, something in his voice goes. And it's really kind of, in his mind, possibly the end of him. And during that time, his wife is shooting Magumbo, and something really terrible happens to him. When she's shooting Magumbo, she decides to terminate a childhood that she had inside of her, and Sinatra didn't know. And she basically was on her way to leaving him. So Sinatra's devastated at this point in his career. He's losing his new wife. He's lost his family. He's no longer a part of anything positive, other than the fact that she goes ahead and she forwards an interesting situation towards him. She has obviously become the #1 star in all of Hollywood, so she gives him a chance at not getting the part, but to simply read for the part of Maggio in From Here to Eternity. And if any of you know that From Here to Eternity, he obviously gets the Academy Award. I'm going to play a clip that I created for you, and we're going to close out on the fact that Sinatra's career and marriage and his voice are in ruin. But tune in next time, because the greatest entertainer in history is going to have a comeback. And I'll let you go with this. Let me go ahead and get this pieced in. And I thank you guys so much for listening. And I made this clip for you, and I really hope that you enjoy it. And then afterwards, we'll talk a little bit more freely if you would like to do some question and answering. Two peas in a pod.
It's 2:45. There's no one in the place except you and me. So set 'em up, Joe. I got a little story I think you should know. We're drinking, my friend, to the end of a brief episode. Make it one for my baby and one more for the road. I got the routine, put another nickel in the machine. Feeling so bad, can't you make the music easy inside? I could tell you a lot, but you've gotta be true to your code. Just make it one for my baby and one more for the road. You'd never know it, but buddy, I'm a kind of poet, and I got a lot of things I'd like to say. And when I'm gloomy, won't you listen to me till it's talked away? Well, that's how it goes. Joe, I know you're getting anxious to close. And thanks for the cheer. I hope you didn't mind my bending your ear. But this torch that I found, it's gotta be drowned, or it soon might explode. So make it one for my baby and one more for the road. The long, it's so long. The long, very long.
Okay.
And everybody, did you enjoy that? He's going to be back in September to talk about Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack years. So
Yes.
you guys
And
can,
I promise I'll be so much better by then. I'm going to do more Zoom meetings with our girl here, Tammy, and we're going to get smoother. It would have been a little smoother today, but I realized that when that thing happened, I lost some of my feeds, but we did get it to go. So thank you so much for sticking with me. I really appreciate you guys doing that. Does anybody have any questions? Because I'm not as scripted as you saw right there. I actually know a lot about this guy.
yeah, he probably knows more than some of you guys. I don't even know if we were, you know, we're not even that old of a membership either, right? Anybody have any questions?
You can chime in.
Thank God, everybody.
It's okay if you don't, it's all right. But, you know, I'll tell you what, when we get to the Rat Pack years, it's going to be great. And I'm going to sing a lot more, okay? This one, I wanted to just bookend it. I wanted him to kind of speak for himself. And in the next one, I think what I'll do is I'll 50-50 it, you know, because I'm going by feel here. And I think that there was a chance that maybe I was showing too much stuff and maybe it scripted a little too much. So I want to get better with this. And I think the next time I come, I'll do some scripting and then I'll jump in and do a lot of singing.
Do you guys like him to sing? Yes?
Yes.
I like him singing.
I'm sorry, say that again? Oh, he got married. He got married 4 times, and in one of those clips, I showed it. I showed each one of the weddings along the way, but they weren't like any specific. Yeah, he was married to Nancy, and then of course he married Ava Gardner, and then afterwards he married Mia Farrow, and yeah, and then he of course married Barbara in the end, and she was with him for the rest of his life, and it was a beautiful marriage.
Oh. Well, that
Hi,
was
how are
an
you?
easy one.
Yes. Any other questions?
Am I on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I see a wiffle ball.
That's me.
All right.
Any comment on any relationship that he had with the mob?
Well, yes, he did, but you got to understand, back in the day, all the singers did. It wasn't, I don't think it was nearly as malicious as people thought. I think that those guys were just proud that he was Italian. And the fact of the matter is that when you worked the clubs back then, those are the guys who owned the clubs. Those are the guys who owned those restaurants. And it was really an impossibility not to at least get to know them on some level. I mean, they were paying for your supper that night. And what Sinatra often said, and so did Dean Martin, and so did Sammy Davis Jr., that these guys, when they were in that particular, you know, kind of room, they were really gregarious, and they were kind, and they were nice, and they even said it themselves. They were pretty nice guys, but we all know that they're also not nice guys. They're terrible guys. But in those situations, it was kind of a necessary evil.
Did you notice that the father's bar was M-O-B?
Yeah.
Mob?
Yeah, I think that's pretty funny. Yeah. Well, you got to remember, it was, believe it or not, an Italian neighborhood, but they wanted to put an Irish bar in there, the M.O.B. And the reason why I called it M.O.B. was because he didn't want it to say Matty O'Brien's, specifically on the window, because apparently they lost a couple windows that way. They were in the wrong neighborhood for that, yeah. But he was known as Marty O'Brien in the ring, and I'm sure when you went in, you realized he was an Italian American. But when you're up there in a ring and you're wearing, you know, an Irish flag colored shorts, I'm sure you're just fine.
Thank you.
Hi.
So you mentioned Shecky Green, and Shecky Green did a show at Glen Eagles, and he came out and he sat down and he said, "I wouldn't be here tonight, but for Frank Sinatra."
Absolutely, absolutely.
I owed the mob, and he mentioned the figure that he owed the mob, and he went to see Frank Sinatra, and Frank Sinatra got the note torn up.
I believe it. Shecky Green and Sinatra were really, really good friends, but people know that Frank, when he drank, he had a little bit of a temper, and there was a period of time. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There was a period of time there where you know, he was going through a lot of his own stuff. And when Shecky was at the Eden Rock here in South Florida, and he was doing a show, and Frank had heard by one of his guys, and he probably would have never done anything about this except for, you know, people that are in those groups, the hangers-on, they want to tell people everything. And people kept chirping in his ear that Shecky had a couple of jokes in his routine that were about Frank, and they were self-effacing. And so he sent somebody over there to go listen to it. And somebody went over and listened to it, and I'm sure that their delivery wasn't as funny as Shecky Green. And when they went over to the Fontainebleau, where Frank was doing his term, his little thing, he didn't like what he heard. So literally during the middle of a show, during a break, he went over there with his guys, and his guys loosened Shecky up pretty well that night. And that's an actual fact. There are times in his life where Shecky said it didn't happen, and then there were times in his life where Shecky said, yeah, it absolutely happened. And Don Rickles knows it happened because they talked about it quite a bit between all four of them. And because, you know, his wife apparently was in on the conversation one day too. So that did happen, but it didn't mean that they weren't the best of friends before and after. I've had brush ups with my buddies in the past too, and I'm still, they're good friends.
Have you seen what Pete Hamill had to say in Why Sinatra Matters?
Could you say that again?
Did you read Pete Hamill's book on Why Sinatra Matters?
Actually, no, I did not read that book, but I saw it in my research. It's one of the books that's actually here on the shelf somewhere, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. What did you hear?
He represented a way of life.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. He was stylish. His popular music to this day is still being listened to people. My cousin, his daughter is 15 years old, and she was swooning to Sinatra music from the 50s because she just did some play that apparently they came out with a play that was about the life of Sinatra, and it didn't play real well in New York, but the music was so great that, you know, she heard the stuff going on, and I guess her boyfriend was in it in high school, and a bunch of the girls started listening to Sinatra music because they just liked it. So yeah, he's still stylish to this day, and he still looks darn good with those hats and those beautiful tailored suits, and you know, he had a lot of style to himself. One of the things that I do when I go out on the stage and sing that I take from Frank is he had this thing where he lined up 3 aspirin and 2 mints, and he had a shot of Jack and Coke. And just out of the fact that I like that feel, I do it too. The only thing I don't have is the cologne and everything else he had on his stand before I walk out on the stage. But I do the 3 aspirin. I have myself a Jack and Coke, and I go right on the stage and I try to do 2 solid hours.
In Philadelphia, there was a station that did all Frank Sinatra every week. I forget who did it and how long it was. It was only Frank Sinatra.
In Philadelphia, there's a DJ by the name of Sid Mark.
That's it.
That's who it was. Sinatra for 60 years.
Yeah.
Friday with Frank's, Sunday with Sinatra.
Yeah, yeah. And if you listen to Legends Radio or on the internet,
Legends.
Legends, or if you live in the West Palm Beach area and you turn on 100.3, you'll hear all that beautiful music all the time. And they do have Sinatra times of day.
Sean, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Did Sinatra ever perform in Canada?
You know, I actually, if I remember right, I don't think he ever did perform in Canada, but I could be wrong on that. Am I wrong on it? I know for the longest time, there were places that he didn't go.
Okay, then I don't want to listen to anymore if he didn't come to my country. Okay.
Oh, come on. I'll tell you what, I'll know the answer to that if you listen to the next thing, because there were a couple places that I was really surprised that he had never had a concert at. And even Dean Martin too. I thought it was amazing that Dean Martin had never sung in London until literally 1985, when the Queen invited him out there to go sing out there. So remember, the world was very different back then. These guys stacked up their time. They already didn't have time enough for their families. So it's pretty amazing to think that in today's world, everybody can get everything so fast and go places. And I can sing for you on the internet right now. But there were places where these guys did not play until much later in their lives. And, you know, I want to look into that. I think I remember reading either A, that he didn't perform in Canada during all of his main years, or B, that he was going to and he never got there. And so I will know that answer the next time that we do this. Just like I learned that song. You know, it's great to learn this stuff. Listen, I just turned 50. But I got to tell you, when my grandfather passed away in 2003, I inherited all of his albums. And I remember listening to Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra and these guys all the time. And when I was little, of course, I was like, oh my gosh, this music. But by the time I got to be a teenager, every weekend I would call him and hear it in the background, and it was something wonderful to listen to, and behind him. And then when he passed away, I was already a singer doing rockabilly and Elvis stuff and all this different, and having a great time with it. But I needed my grandfather, so I started listening to his music, and I didn't just fall in love with it. I've fallen so more in love with this music than I'm in love with anything that's ever been, and I can't stop listening to it. I just can't. I find something new all the time.
In New Jersey, there was a place called the Latin Casino, and big names used to play there. And in order to get a good seat, you would have to tip the maitre d'. And when Frank Sinatra came, the price to get a good seat was about at least $100. That's
what year was that? What year was that, roughly?
Oh, gee whiz, I don't know.
Like the 50s?
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about $100 in the 1950s. You could go out and buy a brand new car to get your family around, probably in 1950. A baseline car like a Chrysler or something like that. You probably go out and buy one of those for about $1,600, and somebody just gave you a big chunk of what it would cost to buy a car just to sit up front. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
Joshua Zilberstock, there was no problem.
What's that? Say it.
Nothing.
Oh, okay. It cuts in and out sometimes when you first start to say something. So has anybody here in the audience ever seen Frank Sinatra live? I actually did, believe it or not. Oh yeah?
I have many times.
Where was your favorite venue, or what was the one time that you saw it that if you could go back in time, you would be there?
Where are we seeing it?
At the Latin.
Oh, the Latin Casino.
We saw him at the Latin Casino.
I saw him in Vegas, and I saw him in New York City.
Yeah, we saw him in Vegas.
I saw him in Boston.
Hi. Oh, really?
Well, my 97-year-old grandmother who lives in Massachusetts, her name is Ida, and she was a Bobby Soxer back in the day. She got tickets for us all to go and see Frank, Sammy, and Dean again in the last hurrah kind of thing that they did in the early 80s. And what ended up happening was 2 nights before or 3 nights before our tickets were ready to go, Dean he was not really truly over the loss of his son. He didn't really have the energy to do it. He wasn't feeling very well. And so he asked if he could step out. And Liza Minnelli was there instead. And it was a fantastic show. I can at least say that I went and got to see Sammy Davis Jr., Liza Minnelli, and Frank Sinatra singing.
I was at that show also.
Yeah, it was a great show. They really were good. Whatever you lose in your voice, you can make up for in chutzpah when you're out there having a good time. And the one thing that Sammy always did was bring 100 gallons of fun with him. Liza had a beautiful voice at that time still. And Frank, though he had some age in his voice, let's face it, he knew what to sing, how to phrase it, and he knew how to deliver a story to you. And he hit the notes when he needed to hit them, and it was just terrific. And I was 16 years old, and I would give anything to be able to put myself back in that 16-year-old kid's body and listen to that show again.
We heard him, and he forgot a lot of words by the time he played Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what would people pay today, you think, if they could go to the Copa Room and watch those guys just for one 1-hour show and just watch them swing at the height of their powers in 1960? I mean, would you take a chunk of the 401k and say, I'm there, I want in? I mean, come on. Those guys had a blast. I mean, who had more fun than them? Do you have any family members or friends that have any stories that have made it through the years where will they tell you about things that they noticed or that they experienced with in any of those shows while growing up?
I can tell you one thing.
Okay.
I saw Frank Sinatra in Boston, the Boston Garden, and when he left the stage, he had a wedge of bodyguards surrounding him as they walked off. It was amazing.
Well, he knew he was in the garden, and he better have some bodyguards. Oh my gosh. I grew up in Massachusetts, so I used to spend a lot of time at the Garden. I saw a lot of great shows, but to get a chance to see Frank Sinatra, that would have been amazing.
Funny to throw it away, but I can't.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? You guys have a Frank Sinatra story? Any movies or anything when you were kids?
We do.
Okay.
I was with a group of Bobby Soxers when I was in high school at the Mosque Theater in Newark. Before he was really very famous, I was a Bing Crosby devotee. And I was a group of Frank Sinatra devotees. Great day. He was wonderful. And I did see him in person for the first time when I was just a teenager.
How did he sound? Was the room really full of his sound? Was it beautiful? Or it was very different, I'm sure, back then? Frank, do you remember how it sounded in the auditorium that day?
Again?
Do you remember how it sounded in the auditorium that day? Was it a big sound?
The Mosque Theater was a marvelous theater for sound, and he was marvelous. He really was. But my friends were all Bobby Soxers screaming and yelling, and I'll never forget it. It was.
Wow.
Hello.
Well, that's nice to know. Look, we have a Bobby Soxer here, everybody. We have a Bobby Soxer. That's all right.
Hello.
I have another one over here.
Hi, hi.
Saddle shoes and Bobby socks.
Nice. So what's your story? I hear you got a story too.
Well, I saw him in New Jersey when he was married to Barbara Marx, the Stadium, and he had Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet with him.
Wow.
And his son was the orchestra leader.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra Jr. Yeah.
I also saw him when his daughter was performing. I don't remember whether it was Vegas or Atlantic City, and the tickets weren't selling. And then he showed up. And when the word came out that he was going to be at his daughter's show, the place became a sellout.
Absolutely. Did they sing Something Stupid together?
No, he would not sing with her.
Okay, okay.
She did her thing. I think marching was her thing. And he had a guitar player, I forget who it was, from Puerto Rico, who was good. But
Yeah.
he sang half a dozen songs, and of course the place was a sellout because of that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think Mrs. Robinson
Yeah.
was a Bobby Soxer, right?
Hi, Mrs. Robinson.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
We saw him at the very end of his career, and unfortunately, he had dementia at that time.
Right.
Performing at Radio City Music Hall, it was quite heartbreaking. He could not remember the lyrics.
Right.
Instead of the audience being tolerant, they were booing him, and I felt so sad. He performed too long. It was time for him to have.
You know, you're right. That performance that you're talking about right there was the run of shows where he realized that was it. He knew he needed to wrap it up. As a matter of fact, I was reading something on that, and then I listened to something by Frank Sinatra Jr. where he said that his father had gotten to the point where he'd have his really good nights and then a lot more bad nights. And what was happening was they had to start putting these big monitors at the front of the stage on the floor that had a real tall screen. And the problem was getting beyond him being able to read it because he couldn't even see it anymore.
Couldn't see it.
So he was starting to get to a point where he was losing his eyes and he was forgetting the words. And though he could still come up with a good sound because he did it when he did the duet stuff, that was because he would have a comfortable and a really good day. He would sit in the studio with those people. They would do more than one take. They would take their time. They now had a thing called Pro Tools where you could sing a really good line or two, and then if it got bad after that, they can cut it. They can put the other parts together. They didn't used to do that back in the day. It was always one take, you know. But the truth of the matter is that, you know, we all get older. Father Time is undefeated. And, you know, he decided to do a one last show, and he called it The Best Is Yet to Come. And he did it in a community similar to what you guys, you know, do with the country club, where he just went in and he knew that there were a bunch of people there that adored him, and he was going to have a very intimate setting. And the very last song that he sang that night with his son in orchestra with him was The Best Is Yet to Come. And if you ever go to his grave, which I did recently, and I sang the last few bars of I Did It My Way, and I laid down right next to it. You see right on the stone, it says, "The best is yet to come." And that's on YouTube if you ever get a chance to see it.
Mr. Freeman, did you want to say something? Were you,
What is this?
It's myself. I remember my sister taking me, my older sister taking me to the Earl Theater in Philly to see Frank Sinatra along with Benny Goodman's band.
Wow.
Never forget that.
Well, Benny Goodman is fantastic.
The Earl Theater.
And that's in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's right. It's in Philly.
Yeah, that was a big, beautiful house. Is it still there? Do you know?
No.
The Earl Theater? No, that's long gone.
Now, did they tear it down or did they repurpose it? Because a lot of those places got repurposed into other things.
No, that's torn down.
As far as I know, they tore it down. No.
Isn't it a shame that some of these places that should be considered historical buildings, because some of them are beautiful, that they just tear them down and put like an apartment building or something there? They did that to the Columbia Records place where all those people did all those recordings, and to this day it's still remembered. And that happened in '81. The Columbia Records building where they made all those, it was actually a church. And if you get a chance to ever look that up online, if you haven't seen it personally, it had this massive cathedral ceiling, and they would record in there. And all the artists through the 1980s all the way back, still to this day, say that that was the greatest recording studio in the world, even better than Abbey Road in England.
In Philadelphia, there was in the early 1900s and the teens, the Metropolitan Opera House.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, they just finished a $65 million renovation, I believe. And it was opened with Bob Dylan opened it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. See, sometimes if you can pull that off, it's a great thing, but you got to do a lot of stuff because, I mean, this property is just through the roof these days at all these places. So they don't care, you know, they just tear it all down. If you guys had a chance to go and see Frank Sinatra sing, where would it be, what venue, and what era in his life?
Don, they have to go to bed, dude.
Okay. Well, this is the last question. Last question.
Carnegie Hall in the 60s.
Carnegie Hall in the 60s. Okay, you've got you. Who else?
I think in Philly it was called the Academy of Music, not the Metropolitan Opera House.
Okay. Okay. Is that where you would want to listen to him if you had any choice, any place to listen to Sinatra today?
It had the best acoustics of any place, accidentally because of the basement, and when they tried to duplicate that, they never could duplicate the sound from the Academy of Music.
Wow, so it had a really good tone to it. Anyone else? If you could listen to Frank Sinatra today, and it could be any era of his life in any place, where would it be?
Well, in New York, right?
Glen Eagles.
Glen Eagles, there you go. Do we want to end it there at Glen Eagles? I promise you. Okay, well, let me tell you guys, not only am I going to do this show that's coming up where it's going to be Sinatra, the later years, all through the Rat Pack and everything else, through the closing of his life, but I can't wait when I get a chance with my guys. I have the best Sammy Davis in the world. I do Dean Martin, and one of my good friends is going to be singing all the Frank Sinatra songs, which breaks my heart because I love singing Frank, and I think I'm better. But anyways, we're going to go out there, and we are going to crush it. Our Sammy Davis Jr., I'm telling you, you won't know it's not Sammy Davis Jr. He's the most brilliant dancer you've ever seen. He sings. It's going to be a great show.
But can you get the phone number back?
Yeah, it'll be right here.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Don.
I love spending time with
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for spending time with me.
Thank you.
All right, so everybody, before you hang up, don't forget tomorrow,
Thank
Sunday
you.
night at 8
You're
o'clock, we have Aaron Kula and Randy Fischenfeld. They're going to be doing the violin and the accordion concert. So you have more music.
Yeah.
And
What
that's
time?
Tomorrow at
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
I'll send out a reminder to everybody. But thank you so much for coming out tonight. And I will
Thank
see you
you.
tomorrow.
You
Okay?
are a pleasure. Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you, Sean.
Bye, guys.
Hi, Joan.
Tammy.
Hi, you.
Tammy,
So good
Tammy,
to
you're
see you.
wonderful.
Nice to see you.
Oh,
Hello.
you guys
Thank
are,
you
you
so
guys make
much.
it easy.
Bye.
You guys all
Really
look
good.
great. I love you. Bye.